Hello there, today I'm gonna try to explain every single Dota item in as short of a time as possible. I will mainly be focusing on why and when you should purchase them instead of what they actually do, since you can read that on the screen on your own. Also, if you're for whatever reason wondering why I haven't uploaded in a while, I really tried my best in ranked Dota and I finally hit my life goal of Immortal. Holy shit, that's actually insane. So more content will be coming now, after I've done this. With that being said, let's get into the items. The Town Portal Scroll is perhaps the most important item in Dota, and you should almost always carry at least one, preferably 2 or 3 teleport scrolls on you at all times. Clarity is a mana regenerating item that requires a lot of time away from enemy heroes to be effective. This is usually good on support if you have a passive lane and you can stay back and regen mana safely, or if you're a core in the jungle who needs the extra mana regen, since it's the most cost-effective mana that you can get. Fairy Fire is an early game item that helps with last hitting and duels at low HP. It's usually picked up by mid players as a starting item, since it helps with last hitting and duels to the death is pretty common there. The Smoke of Deceit is a very strong item that is preferably used on most of your team to go and hunt an enemy hero or carry or play around an objective. If you're in the lower to mid MMR ranges where smokes are usually not sold out in the shop, it's definitely okay to smoke just yourself to get a ward down or move quickly around the map. Using Observer and Sentry wards is a game in and of itself, but if you're unsure you can always place them on cliffs. It's never going to be a bad choice necessarily. Just make sure that they never fill up completely in the shop like this. The Enchanted Mango, or just Mango, is a quick and aggressive mana regeneration item that instantly regens 100 mana. It's useful in lanes where you want to be aggressive and put a lot of pressure on the enemy, like if you're playing Undying or Skywrath Mage. The Healing Salve is a quick regeneration item that is useful if you expect to take a lot of damage quickly. Tangos, on the other hand, are a lot more cost effective, but gives out the regen over a long duration. In the early game, you almost always want to carry some tangos on you, since the regen they give is very worth it for the gold. Blood Grenades are super strong early game items that are usually picked up by the support to slow an enemy hero enough that you can kill them in lane. Dust of Appearance is the biggest counter to invisibility and should be used throughout the entire game against invis heroes if you have the slots. The Bottle is an early game item almost exclusively picked up by mid laners, since it refills when you take up a rune. It's useful on heroes that spend a lot of mana early game in the lane. Aghanim's Shard has different effects on every hero in the game, but usually on support it's never a bad option to go for the Shard. Quelling Blade is a must-have on melee core heroes, since it makes last hitting a lot easier. Infused Raindrops or just Raindrops are useful if you think you're gonna die to enemy spells soon. Orb of Venom is good on melee heroes early game if you know you wanna chase the enemy in lane. Magic Stick and its upgrade Magic Wand are useful against heroes that spam spells a lot. Both of these items also give a lot of cost-effective regen, meaning it's never a bad choice to go for a wand in the early mid game. Game of True Sight is usually picked up in the mid to late game for 2 reasons. Either a team is dominating and want to continue that lead, or one team is losing against a lot of enemy invis heroes, where the game is gonna be very useful, but it comes at a high risk, high reward. Ghost Scepter is a really strong item against physical damage, and it's pretty cheap as well. If you're against a PA or Juggernaut on support, you should almost always pick this item up. Blink Dagger allows you to quickly engage on an enemy, meaning that you can stay further back and play more defensively while still being in the effective range of your spells. It's very useful on heroes that have big engages that you want to surprise the enemy with, like Tidehunter or Enigma. Null Talisman, Wraithband and Bracer help the laning stage for their respective attributes. But remember, just because you're a strength hero doesn't mean that you only have to go Bracer. In some cases, where the enemy has a lot of physical damage, it might actually be more useful to go for Wraithband, which gives you agility and in turn a lot of armor. Soul Ring is picked up on heroes with high health regen and high mana usage, like Alchemist or Chaos Knight. Orb of Corrosion is an upgraded Orb of Venom. Falcon Blade is a cheap early game item that gives health, mana regen and damage to cores that need that extra little boost in the early game. Power Treads are the most versatile and common boots for core heroes. Phase Boots are picked as an option to Power Treads for heroes that want the movement speed and need the armor. This can be good against matchups where the enemy has a lot of physical damage. Mask of Madness is usually picked up by core heroes to quickly farm the jungle. Hand of Midas is an item usually picked up if you believe the game is going to be slow from this point on, or that you won't have access to a lot of creeps, so every creep needs to be optimized. Helm of the Dominator and its upgrade Helm of the Overlord allows you to push a lot in the early game and gives you a huge power spike as soon as you get the item. But it becomes pretty bad later in the game since the enemy gets a lot of gold if they manage to kill your creep. Boots of Travels and Boots of Travels 2 are generally the best boots to get in the late game, but can be an option early and mid game to power treads and face boots if you're a core hero. Moonshard is generally gotten very late into the game, where all your item slots are already full, since you can consume it and still gain a bit of the bonus. You can also give Moonshards to your teammate, so if you have all other items and you have your own Moonshard, it's never wrong to give a teammate a Moonshard as well. Veil of Discord and Shiva's Guard gives you armor and lowers the enemy's magic resistance, meaning it's good on spellcasters who are up against a lot of physical damage. Glimmer Cape is good on support heroes up against a lot of magic damage on the enemy team. Force Staff is a good support item for kiting the enemy and countering specific melee heroes. Aetherlance and its upgrade Ethereal Blade gives you extra cast range. Witchblade and its upgrade Parasma is useful on intelligence heroes that like to right-click the enemy. This is usually Storm, OD or Puck. Yule's Scepter of Divinity, usually called Yule's, and its upgrade Windwaker are used to dispel negative debuffs off yourself. They can also be very useful if you don't have any catch on your team. Rod of Aethos and its upgrade Gleipnir is good against evasive, mobile enemy heroes that are punished a lot if they are rooted to the ground. Dagon and its upgrades deal some magic damage but costs a lot of gold, meaning there are some very narrow cases where it's good to go for it, like on Nyx. Orchid Malevolence, usually called Orchid, and Bloodthorn, its upgrade, are useful against heroes that rely on their spells, like Puck or Storm Spirit, since it silences them for a pretty decent duration. Pavis and its upgrade Solar Crest are very useful on supports when you're up against a lot of physical damage on the enemy team. Refresh Orb is a good item on heroes who have long cooldowns on really important impact spells, like Tidehunter with Ravage, Enigma with Black Hole, Warlock with Golan. Octarine Core is a mid to late game item that reduces the cooldown on all your spells. It's usually good on heroes that are constantly spamming their spells, like Puck or Skywrath. Seraph Vice, sometimes just called Hex, is a very strong late game disable. Urn, and more importantly Spirit Vessel, is a must-have against enemy heroes with a lot of HP regen. Tranquil Boots are one of the two common support boots, and they are useful when you don't really have a ton of mana issues, neither you or your team. Arcane Boots are useful when you or your team has major mana issues. Drum of Endurance and its upgrade Boots of Bearing, usually just called Drums and Drum Boots, are useful for when you want to siege and push an enemy tower or objective. Mechanism and its upgrade Guardian Greaves, usually just called Mech and Greaves respectively, are useful against enemy bursts, and Guardian Greaves specifically are good against enemy debuffs that can be dispelled. Pipe of Insight is good when the enemy team has a lot of magic damage. Vanguard and its upgrade Crimson Guard are good against an enemy team with a lot of physical damage. Blade Mail is good against enemy glass cannons, heroes with a lot of damage but very low HP. Aeon Disc is a good mid to late game item for supports whose focus is disabling the enemy. It's mainly useful against big burst and long disables. Lotus Orb is a good mid game item for when you want to either dispel or protect you or an allied hero against single target spells, or items like Orchid. Black King Bar, usually just called BKB, is an almost universally picked up item mid to late game on core heroes, since it gives you magic resistance and spell immunity. Dragonlance and its upgrade Hurricane Pike allows you to stay further away from the enemy and kite a lot better. Manta Style, usually just called Manta, is an item very good for farming that's usually picked up by the hard carry, boss 1. Lincoln Sphere is a situational mid to late game item that's usually picked up against single target high impact spells, like Duel or Laguna Blade. Assault Caress is super good late game if both teams have a lot of physical damage. It also helps a lot if you want to push enemy towers. Bloodstone is useful on spellcasters who also wants to tank a lot of damage, like Leshrac or Timbersaw. Eternal Shroud is good on heroes who are expected to tank some damage, but also have mana issues. Echo Saber and its more useful upgrade Harpoon are useful for catching and chasing enemy heroes. Maelstrom and its upgrade Mjolnir helps you farm a lot faster. Diffusal Blade and Disperser are more aggressive options that allow you to slow the enemy. Mage Slayer, not surprisingly, is very good against teams with a lot of magic damage. Philacrity and its upgrade Kanda is useful on heroes who can both right-click and have single target spells, for example Luna. Heaven's Halberd is good against single enemy heroes with a lot of right-click damage. Kaya and Sanch is good on tanky spellcasters. Sanch and Yasha is good on tanky right-clickers. Yasha and Kaya is useful in the rare case that your hero is both a magic user and a right-clicker. Satanic is good late game when you know you will have the ability to hit the enemy a lot, like against Axe or Legion Commander. Skade is good against enemy regen, but it also gives a ton of stats, so it's never really a bad choice on a right-click core hero. Overwhelming Blink, Swift Blink and Arcane Blink are mega late game items that are useful on strength, agility and intelligence heroes respectively. Meteor Hammer is an item that shifts in and out of the meta quite a lot, but it's good on heroes that have disables that can set up for the Meteor Hammer, like Nyx or OD. Armlet of Morrigan, you usually just call Armlet, is useful on strength heroes with a lot of HP regen. Skull Basher and its upgrade Abyssal Blade, usually just called Basher and Abyssal, are useful for disabling a single enemy hero and trying to burst them. Shadowblade and its upgrade Silver Edge are useful for scouting and engaging on enemy heroes when you know they don't have a lot of vision. Desolator is an aggressive early game item that helps with fighting enemy heroes and pushing towers. Battle Fury, on the other hand, is a very defensive early game item that mainly helps you with farming and split pushing. Nullifier is good on core heroes against enemy support items like Glimmer Cape, Yules, Force Staff and Ghost Scepter. Monkey King Bar is a good item on core heroes against a lot of evasion like PA or Wind Ranger. Butterfly is a super good late game item on core right clickers, especially if the enemy has a lot of right click as well. Radiance is generally an early game farming item, but it can be pretty useful against enemy teams with a lot of right click or illusions like PL for example. Daedalus is a strong late game item on core right clickers. Divine Rapier is an insanely strong but risky item that is usually either picked up by a really desperate team looking for something that can turn the tides, or a team that's stomping that need to close out the game. Reverend's Brooch is a very situational late game item for heroes that are both right clicker and spellcasters. I'm not gonna go over the neutral items right now, but if you're interested in that, let me know in the comments and I'll do it immediately. But I don't think there is a lot of interest for those, so maybe not. Anyways, thanks for watching. I'll be trying to make more content now, so if you have any ideas, just let me know. I got this idea from a comment as well, so just tell me, I will credit you if you want. And yeah, good luck in your games. Bye bye.